Hey there, this is episode 2 of the Next Gen Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Today we interview Jesse and Audrey Klaue from Higher Standard Home Inspections. They're longtime friends of ours, our preferred real estate inspector for our buyer clients, and more than that, they are also homesteaders as well. They live in Moni with their 2 girls, Charlotte and Nora, and they taught us so much today.
Yeah, and we're talking about the shift that a lot of people are making nowadays to the homestead world, getting away after COVID from cities all the way to the countryside or more suburban areas. We're seeing that shift happen a lot, and they talk about that. They talk about their personal experience in doing this. And we talk about just other things with health in general and how that ties into what they do full time with home inspections. So it was a really good podcast. We want to do many more with them. They're just really an interesting couple. So we're excited to hear what you guys think about this one.
Well, hey.
Hi.
Yeah, we're super excited to be here. Thanks for
excited to have you
Thanks
guys.
for joining us. Yeah. We've known each other for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
So just to kind of start with that, Audrey, you were my substitute teacher in high school. How many years ago was that? Oh, I hear my 10-year reunion is supposed to be next year. So
really,
I think we've known each other for 11, 12 years
12
now.
years, yeah.
Wow.
I think you were a sophomore.
Yeah. And then I started babysitting the girls.
Yeah.
And then I met Jesse.
Yeah.
And then Jesse came home and we all got to know each other more. And then you guys asked me if I was dating anyone. And I said no, but if you know anyone. And
Jesse knew immediately that it would be Eric.
Yes, I did.
I have to give him
I
that
recognized 2 exceptional people, very type A, very motivated and driven. And I was like, you know what? They probably make a good couple, because I can't imagine Eric being with someone that's not that way, like focused in the same direction, and just being exceptional people that are able to make a plan, stick to that plan, and accomplish it. So,
Well, and at a young age too, I felt like
especially.
there were other candidates that were also just amazing and awesome that we were like, hey,
Right.
we have great
candidates.
yes, candidates.
Like
Because I was like, hey, let's not put all the pressure on Aaron. But the Lord knew what He was doing, and we're so grateful. It's been really beautiful to see. Not our hand. It was just a vessel of being used, but also to see like your marriage and your friendship and how that's grown, and it's so beautiful in a world that marriages aren't surviving, especially in a lot of age groups. I mean, no matter where. But I don't know. Yeah, we did that. We didn't do it. We did do it, but we did it. No,
Right.
we did it.
Got you.
Exactly.
He did.
That's how
it was
it
really
felt.
cool.
Well, it's been cool to see you guys too. You guys were living in Midlothian then, right?
Mhm.
And now you guys are in Moni. And...
Actually, we were living in Oak Forest with our pastor when I was substitute teaching.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
did
even
that
know
for a year. Yeah.
Yeah, that allowed us to save up some money to buy our first home. Then we did a lot of work in 5 years, and were able to get a really good profit off of that home.
Which you helped us buy. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then we were able to buy a home. Actually, I remember seeing it. It was one of the lists that we got. We're like, there's no way. This house is way too nice. We could never afford this house. And through that process with really skilled realtors, we were able to get a 3-acre home in country.
Wow, yours are on 3 acres.
It's
Yeah.
almost 3 acres. Yeah,
I did not
Plus
realize
survey
it was that
wrong.
big.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you don't
We
have
might
to
have
really
taken-
maintain that much land because
Right.
some of it is past
Yeah.
the fence line. But that kind of gets us into like where you guys are now. Like, tell us more about your home and like the land and what you guys have done with it.
So much.
So most of it is forest, trying to clean up, get rid of the invasive species that are there. There's a lot of different types of plants that choke out good trees like apple trees and maples and other things. So we've been just kind of taking care of that and putting in fences just so that we can make it as just kind of least amount of work possible. Putting in efficient, exactly. Put in some goats and maybe some sheep to just
As
keep
we-
the woods.
Try to figure
Yeah.
out what we wanted. It just changed.
What animals have you had at the farm so far? Or not the farm, but at your homestead, I guess we can call it. And what have you enjoyed and what haven't you enjoyed?
So you want me to answer that one? Okay, so I guess my hesitation is that we go back because it's like, okay, when you first start off homesteading, you read all these books, or at least we did. We read these books, so we just didn't really know what type of homesteaders we wanted to be. And so when we were at our Midlothian house, we weren't able to have animals, and so we just turned it into a garden. We tried to garden in our front walkway, and it wasn't as we did what we could with the property.
You had planters anywhere you could.
Anywhere we could, yeah, we did, and it was really great. So we were honing that and just been wanting animals. So then when we were able to move, which a big important thing is if you do want to do homesteading is looking into the zoning of your property. That was something that we weren't familiar with, but zoning for agriculture is what you want because a lot of places will allow chickens, but it's zoned residential. And so chickens are the gateway to a lot of things, positive. And so we have found that we were very happy that we had an ag zoning so that we could get pigs and cows if we wanted, and sheep and donkeys or other crazy animals like that.
Wow.
So yeah, the list goes on, but we did have guinea pigs for about 3.5 years. It was a dream of mine. It's a really cool breed. And so we raised them from piglets and then we bred them and had 2 rounds of piglets and in the span of 3.5 years. And that was a wild ride.
We did the typical thing for first-time homesteaders, which is everything and anything we could do.
Right.
You know,
Which
we
all
have
the
a bunch
books
of
say
chickens.
no.
Yeah, everybody does it. You don't have to, but I mean, I guess it's a rite of passage at this point.
I
Way
was
too
gonna
many
say-
animals, chickens, pigs, too much property to manage and get like everything done at once. Not that the property was too much, but it was just too much we were trying to do.
Well, in all the homesteading books, they're like start small.
Right.
And so we're reading them. I did so much research on just different types of farmers or different types of homesteaders and what they're doing with their property. We had beehives for a little bit. We didn't have bees, but we had the hives. Like we were ready, right? And so it's hard when you're listening or you're reading to these people who are educated and they've been in it for years and you're like, yeah, I trust them. And then you go and you're just like, your excitement for it, because like I said, they're gateway. Like once we got chickens, we didn't have a chicken coop. They lived in our garage for a ridiculous amount of time, like way too long.
Wow.
And so then we built our coop, and then it's like, oh, you're going to build a coop, then we need compost. And then we obviously wanted to garden because that's what I wanted to have. And so it was just like one thing led to another, and we just like, oh, we could do this. And we are what you would call entrepreneur ADHDers. Like we're very professional at it. We love starting projects, and the finishing part is harder, but it keeps us on our toes. So we definitely advise, and everybody that I talk to will say the same thing to people. Start small, but you won't. You probably won't. Like, you just get excited. But it's been cool because I feel like it's helped us figure out what we want. We still don't know what type of homesteaders or how much bigger we're going to get. We're talking about sheep. We're talking about different ideas, but figuring out what's good for our family and what our needs are based off of our goal and why. It goes back to the why are we doing this? And if it doesn't fit into that goal, that mission, then it's a distraction. And so that's what we've been focusing a lot on, and other than just doing all the things because that's what you do and it's fun.
So if someone were looking to buy a homestead, we have clients that are like, I'm so over my HOA and they're dictating what color fence I have, and my child's interested in animals and they love animals, and so I want to move and buy a piece of property where I could turn it into a homestead. What are some key things that they should look for? You mentioned zoning. Is there anything else that you would recommend, like soil samples or?
It depends on what you want to do. If you're looking to grow like your source of meat, to have healthy local grass-fed, you want to make sure that you have at least 1 acre of field. That's
Per
typically
cow,
for 1 cow.
So 1 acre field, not actually that the home sits on, like 1 empty acre.
Like a
Exactly.
pasture.
Okay.
Yeah, they could graze rotationally, but
Right.
we haven't done cows yet.
No.
We have other friends who have.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
and
the
I grew
standard.
up
And it's
Okay.
farm community.
That's the standard. You'd probably be all right with 2 like smaller sheep or goat on 1 acre. And that's enough to sustain them through the summer. You'll use hay in the winter time.
Okay.
But it depends on, it goes back to the goals, right? So a lot of times we say start small, but when you start small, you do think about the future, right? Like what would 10-year homesteader family or like self want, maybe 20-year? And you don't necessarily know, but if you have an interest in horses, right? Or if you have an interest in, maybe I do want to raise my own meat pigs or meat cows or cows for meat or, any of the larger type animals and having a larger flock, then that, 1 to 5 acres might actually turn into 10, right? But there's a lot of people who think, oh, I need to start off with 10 acres, or I need to start off with this huge amount of land. But you can do so much on 1 acre.
Right.
You can do so much on 5 acres. I feel like 5 acres is such a good start. But again, it's hard to say that because it's what your goals are. Like, you know, we might not ever have cows on there, but we want sheep and we want pigs and to raise meat chickens. And so that will look very different for our needs and our goals. And then if we wanted to, we could, you know, you could expand, but you got the land property, you would look to see if that's an option to expand.
So it sounds like you can quickly outgrow the land that you buy, depending on what kind of animals you want to have. So thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the line might be helpful.
Right. And I wouldn't say that should stop you, but I guess you kind of need to go back to like, what are we saying when we say homesteading, right? There's an aspect of being self-sustaining, self-efficient, to be able to grow what you eat, to know that it's healthy, to know that you can trust what you're eating to be the best, and it's also the best quality tasting, you know, eggs as well. Do you want to be able to cover the cost of owning those things as well, right? That's something I always look at. If we're going to do an animal, will I be able to sell some of these animals and pay for the cost of everything we're doing? And so in order to do that, you kind of need to think of it as something you want to cash flow. Like, how will I cover the cost of raising this cow? You know, you could sell off half of it and you should be able to cover your cost on something like that.
So if you're like brand new at homesteading, you've never done this before, what would you start with?
So I recently have been doing a lot of research, talking to some other friends that raise sheep. And there is a type of sheep that you don't have to shear the wool, and they grow fast. The meat also brings a premium. So I think that's where I am right now, just counting the number, counting the cost, and thinking about how would I make the most amount of money in this shortest amount of time and cover the cost of buying the sheep and feeding them.
I have maybe 200 square feet space that I can use for my little garden that I have in my backyard. And now my whole algorithm is filled with all this homesteading stuff. I'm watching videos of a guy who like developed a geothermal house and greenhouse. And there was another one where a guy, he built a home and he has no heating bill. He just has like thermal mass inside of his home and uses a greenhouse on the side of his house to heat his home. And so now I'm starting to get into the homesteading stuff, and I'm like, can we get something that's like an acre or something like that?
Well, that's the thing, and my answer would be a little bit different for homesteading, because it goes back to like homesteading to me starts as a mindset. It's a mindset of being reliant on what you do and your own home, right? Like, we're growing food. Like, it doesn't have to do with you don't have to have any animals to be considered a homesteader. And that might not be the definition that like the dictionary gives, but in my mind, it feels more like, hey, my goal is to be less reliant on grocery store foods. I remember when COVID hit, the panic that set in at these grocery stores, it was insane. And we didn't feel that. We were canning at the time, and we had a garden. It's like, I know we would get food. We weren't prepared fully, but I didn't like that mindset of having to be reliant on food. And so what we've done is try to learn skills and start with like food preparation. Let's figure out how to preserve food that you can get from the grocery store, and you can freeze dry, you can do so many things that you don't have to necessarily grow, right? But you're being self-sufficient and you're not relying on that, and you're able to. So like learning skills like that, learning how to grow. You can grow hydroponically, you can grow indoors, you can grow on your balcony, you can grow in a small space or a large space. There's no reason for you not to be able to grow and start something. And so I think that's where I would say is learning about self-sufficiency, learning about what it would be to maybe have your own, like when we talk about buying land, like making sure you have water, right? Like that's a big deal, making sure that your water's in the correct area for the land that you can do multiple things with. Just having that mindset and then learning these skills and educating on the different options, like that house, which we've seen a few of those in Michigan actually, and they're incredible. And the benefits of a greenhouse, the benefits of a cellar, like a root cellar, and you don't have to have all of the things to start preserving and start honing in on the mindset of what it means to be a homesteader, and like slowly building your home into that.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think about, the farm life is often called the simple life, which it isn't. But some things should be simple, like ingredients should be simple. You know, you don't need a lot of ingredients to make bread. And if you on the back of the package it has more than 4 or 5 ingredients for bread, then something is wrong there. You know, and so the quality of making your own bread from home, knowing what you're using, and educating yourself, kind of starting off of what playing off of what Audrey was saying, is start to educate yourself now, learn what you can, and start now, so that when you're ready to do it, you're that much further ahead and have learned that much more.
Yeah, you said that the homestead life isn't the simple life. I think social media tries to make it seem, it's like the slow life, and I'm just out here milking my cow, and like
I should get my friend Casey on here to tell you what that's about.
I don't think that's what it is, right?
It is. So there are some things that there's a cost, right? Like we pay to have the convenience that we live in the suburbs and the city, and just in this first world mindset that we have to grow up in. It's not simple. It's not easy. It comes at a great sacrifice and cost. But there is something that's better about a life where you're able to enjoy the simple things of walking out in the rain and being out in nature, and being able to be there and present to enjoy that. Because we're so distracted, we're so focused on what the world says we need to be happy, and it's wrong.
And when you have a lot of work to do, like whether you're like composting or building a garden or taking care of chickens or just like maintaining that, you're busy. And then when you're done, you're tired. And so it helps with not going to the phone, not going to the TV. You know, we're reading books at night. We're trying to, you know, grow our knowledge of these things, and we're planning projects constantly, you know, and it helps us reconnect with each other and stay focused on, again, going back to like our mission. Why are we doing this? What is our goal? And how can we do it well? And how can we do it that is honoring, you know, to our mission, to, you know, what we believe in, and to take care of the things well, not just for ourselves, but the bigger picture in mind. And so it does help with that when you're outside, which, I mean, the benefits of just that alone have been huge, because I feel like we often go to social media, even the homesteaders in social media, like people do a great job, and I'm glad that they're able to use that to make money as an extra form of income and to showcase what they're doing and what they're learning. But you private message them and they'll say it comes with hard work and late nights and, you know, concerns and a lot of cost and problem solving. It's constant problem solving, but it's so good. It feels good, and you feel like you're being brought back to home. Right? Like so much of us are like, we're working for other people. If you're not an entrepreneur, you're like, you're working for somebody else, and I'm doing all these things for somebody else. But when you come home, you're bringing it back, and you're bringing purpose into your life that is greater than I think for us. It's been greater to look back on. And how do I say that? Like
right. Well, so it's back to that cost thing, right? There's something worth working for. In growing your own food and working hard. Like we, you know, tend to want the easy path forward, and sometimes there's this misconception that if it's hard, something's wrong. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Like that the good things are hard and they're worth fighting for and working hard for.
So what do you feel like homesteading has taught your girls? First off, how old are your girls, and how did they transition from kind of living in the suburbs just with your guys' like garden around your home to then the homestead life?
Well, they have some complaints. They really liked sidewalks.
They love sidewalks.
They can't just go out and ride their bikes anymore, where you guys
right?
No, we do in our neighbor's house, but yeah, no, they can't do that. But we have two little girls, and they are 7 and 9, just turned, and they're wonderful and amazing. And I swear they're teaching us more than we ever thought kids could teach us. But they've been on for the ride. They were younger when we were in Midlothian. They were, I can't do the math of when we moved. I think they were 3 and 5 when we moved. Yeah, or 4 and 2. Something around that.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's so hard.
But
they loved it. I've got pictures of them in the garden eating like whole peas, and you know, Nora had just learned to sit up, and it just, they've been around it. You know, we've tried to keep them, get dirty and be out. And one of our good friends has a forest school, and so like we were in that for a little while and just connecting with nature. So I feel like to them it's like, oh yeah, moving was like they have this big yard, and then we were building the garden together, and they get to help, and this year they're going to do their own garden. They're going to be taking care of their own part, and Charlotte is just very, very excited about that. Nora just wants to eat them all.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good, there's a lot of hard things. The fact that there's lots of life and there's lots of death, and being connected to that death and seeing it firsthand is hard for kids. It's hard for us, and I think it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Knowing the cost of life, the value of life. You don't know the value of life sometimes till you lose it.
Yeah, we had experienced quite a bit of loss when we first moved to our home, and that was just challenging in and of itself. And then, I did always have this dream of having pigs, and so it came a little bit sooner than we probably were prepared, because buying animals is my coping mechanism. So that was part of it. And so when we had piglets, it was beautiful. I mean, I would wait. I had a chair outside. I was waiting for them, and the girls got to see, like, they were so excited when they finally came. I mean, it was an eruption of joy and screaming. We were having a garage sale that day, and it was like, we were just telling everybody, like, sorry, I don't care if you even steal stuff. We're going to go see these piglets. And then one of the moms was not a good mom. We had two moms, and she was not a good mom at all. And so we learned very early. We had to separate them, and one of the piglets did not make it. And Nora is our little animal lover, and we had lost our dog when we first moved in. The first week she was hit by a car, and that was really hard for our girls. That was our first pet, and we had her for a while, and so that was still fresh. And so for Nora, now experiencing this, I really didn't know what to do, because I was really numb in my own grief.
Right.
And then, but you have to look past it when you have kids. It's like, okay, you're not just caring for them. You have to look at what you're doing and focus on them and how they're processing. And it was so beautiful to see how she processed this. Like, she cried, and she loved this piglet, and she made, like, she was 4 at the time. She was 4, and she made this, like, beautiful, like, she picked flowers and she put it in a box, and we had a ceremony for it, and we buried it, and she made a sign, like, all on her own fruition of doing this. And it helped us. It helped us because she didn't even know this piglet. She knew the value of life, even though she didn't know that's what she was learning and seeing, and she recognized it, and she cared for it, and it was so, I feel like crying, because it was so beautiful, especially in that season of life, and more death had come. We had lost one more piglet after that. We lost our favorite chicken. Many chickens we've learned not to name them anymore. We don't name them, but now the loss is, they understand it a little bit more, and we still grieve, and they're not numb to it. They're uninhibited, is that the word? Like, they're just free to be. And so often in our own life, in our own culture, I feel like grief, whether it's an animal or a loved one, we just, like, close up, or we don't express it fully, and then it's harder to process through. And when you're living a homestead life, whether it's a plant, I could not believe that I was crying over a plant that I had worked really hard at caring for, looking back. But it helps, and it does. It adds a little bit of resilience, but also compassion. And you also value the work that you do more. And I think that at them being at a young age, they understand what it takes, or they're learning what it takes to care for an animal and to care for it well. And that some things happen. And so when we learn, like, bad things happen, and what do we do with that? What do we do with those feelings? And so there's been lots of conversations we've had, and they've been hard, but really good and really necessary.
It almost sounds like you're getting organic lessons through, no pun intended, like
organic non-GMO lessons.
Right. Non-GMO lessons.
Yes.
Through the way that you guys are living, versus, like, them going and learning those lessons from other things. They're here at the home, living and seeing grief and seeing joy, but they're experiencing something different there. And, has it made parenting easier on you guys, or do you guys feel like it's been more work than?
Parenting is not easy in any form. When you become a parent, you said it really perfectly this morning. Like you were saying that you now have this new life that you have to recognize is not your own. Well, you know it's not your own, but like as a mom, it's hard. Like she's mom, but you know you feel so closely bonded. But now this human, this life is yours to protect. Protect not only mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, but like wholly. And so that goes back to the why. Like, yes, it's been hard. Maybe a little bit harder because we found out early on that Nora had a lot of allergies and went to multiple doctors. They still don't know what is actually wrong with her. She's had procedures done. Nobody can tell us. And so it's forced us. Before we were more focused on the food and what ingredients are, you know, we weren't as focused on that. We were focused on more of like the external kind of things. And then we started looking, and this opened our eyes because the kid can't eat anything without having a strong reaction or without being in pain. And she's had this pain for her whole life, and it's just something's wrong with that. And we've seen a shift once we've taken out foods that are just why this is unnecessary, and like that is part of us, and they do not like it. Like they're on board with most of it now, but there was a time where they couldn't understand. This is what I want. I like this. All my friends have it. Why can't I have it? And we were the bad guys, and we were okay with being the bad guys. It was tough at first, but over the years explaining, this is why mommy reads the ingredients. This is why we make our own. And then I remember I did allow Charlotte in particular was having a hard time. So we went to Culver's, and I said, eat whatever you want. So she got a kid's meal. She got a root beer and an ice cream cone. And she ate, and I just let her we had a nice mommy date together, and it didn't take long. And before we left, she was in the bathroom throwing up. And for me, she is my kid that has to learn. We teach her to question everything. We teach our kids to question everything, and sometimes that bites us in the butt. Yeah. And so I'm like, because I just want to be like, just trust us. And I'm like, ooh, I'm actually teaching you to do the opposite, like question and learn and educate and read up and fight the system. No, but she did, and so she experienced it on her own. And then we talked about it, and I wasn't angry at her, and I was just like, how did that make you feel? You know, and it opened her own eyes, and it was really good because that was a game changer. Now this is why we can't eat pizza. This is why we can't go and eat out at most any restaurant. And remembering that your body is a temple. You know, we're believers, and so we need to take care of that. And it's been easier the longer we keep instilling it and encourage it.
Yeah, I mean, I go back again to the cost of something great, right? Like, these lives they're sponges, and they're so like resilient, but yet delicate. And you know, I don't want to leave any risk up to that, to, you know, somebody else influencing their quality of life. But I think about like what you were saying, they will believe what we tell them to believe, right? Like, and that's a lot easier. This is what we believe. This is what you believe. That's a lot of the times what we grow up with, you know? And I look at it like, why do you believe what you believe? You know, for myself, I think, okay, I was told this growing up. Why do I believe that? Why do I believe that is, even though that person might have had my best interest in mind when they told me that, let me think for myself. And I want to teach my kids how to do the same. It helped in the community I grew up in to do that, because I had a lot of different types of people around me. I had the opportunity to travel the world a good bit as well when I was young. So it's that, how do you teach them to think for themselves? That question I keep asking myself. And this is what I believe, and this is why. What do you think about it? And it takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more work, but it's worth it to me, because that will help them the rest of their life to be able to think for themselves.
Yeah. Not
just think something because somebody else told them to believe it.
It's like our whole mindset of, even with what we eat, it's hard when you have to pay for food that is healthier, and you have to take steps that are healthier, and it does cost you more upfront monetarily and time. But we also see a trend of people who are in their 60s and older coming to us and being like, yeah, I'm starting now to eat healthy. What do I do? And it's like, you're already fighting cancer. You're fighting all these diseases. Your heart is struggling, and now we're making the shift and it's costing you. And it is harder at first because you have to weigh, and then you figure out, well, it's trying to teach them and ourselves, like, it's going to cost us a lot here, but in the future it'll save you. And it's what it is, because we're not just trying to invest in right now, we're trying to invest in you and our future as a whole and fully, all of your life that you're living.
Well, and it can be very overwhelming, and like, we don't do it perfectly. There are some late night trips to McDonald's, like, I will confess that.
The fries, I know I should. It was like once a month.
Yeah, and nobody's going to do it perfectly, and that's okay, because there's so much information out there. There is a lot of anecdotal information, which is reliable. Like, there's a lot of reasons to not trust a lot of the things we put in our body. But just take it slow, because there's so much information. Just start with some common sense things, and start cutting out ingredients that are there unnecessarily.
Which we could do a whole new other podcast on that, on how to start, what steps you can take to start small, and what you can do. But yeah, don't try to eliminate it or try to do all the things at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Crawl, walk, run yourself into it. So,
Exactly.
Yeah. To kind of shift subjects a little bit, how did your guys' upbringing influence this mindset of where you guys are now with homesteading and wanting to kind of have more control over what goes into your bodies and your kids? Were you guys raised in the homesteading life, or is this kind of a new thing for you guys in the last decade or so?
Sure.
I was not, but I want Jesse to share his, because his leads into what mine. So.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead.
So I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania, in an Amish Mennonite home. And then, a lot of we were out in the country, out in the middle of nowhere. I think it was like 20, 30 minutes to the nearest small town. My neighbors were Amish, and my nanny, when we had one, was Amish as well. So it was great. As a boy, I was like at the foothills of a mountain, and so that was our playground, was the mountains and the woods and stuff. So I love that. We always had animals around. So I grew up. It was definitely a homestead. It was, we did everything. And I learned to do a little bit of everything, how to grow, how to raise animals.
How to drive a tractor at a very, very young age.
I learned how to drive stick shift at 7 years old.
Wow, I don't know how to drive stick shift at 26
We
years
can
old.
teach you.
Yeah. And it was, it was definitely more dangerous compared to what we know now. I fell out of a moving vehicle a couple times as a kid, but
You survived.
Yeah.
Resilient.
Right. People and kids are more resilient sometimes than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
So
I don't even think, would you have considered yourself homesteaders, or that was a way of life?
It was.
Your mom
It
said
really
at one point
was.
you didn't
Yeah.
even have running water. So
I didn't
think
know
that
it
was
was
just
homestead.
right. I think that was just how people live.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of a throwaway culture here in the suburbs and the city. You don't see the value of things if they're not immediate purpose, and it was very opposite to that in the country. Everything has value and has purpose.
Yeah, and no, I grew up in Palos Park, so I was fortunate to grow up in more of a wooded nature preserve area, which my brother and I and my sister were only one of two other families in the neighborhood that had kids, so we were just always outside, always exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God we did not grow up with computers or phones, but we were outside a lot. I didn't, we have the children's farm in Palos, which I absolutely love, so we would go there, but there was no other, I was going to be so many things, but farmer or homesteader was never one of them. It was not until Jesse and I were married. And I remember the moment. It sticks out in my head. And we were in an apartment. I was watching a show about goats. I was like, I want goats. And that's when that was the first initial, because we were going to school in the city. We were working in the city. Where did this dream come from? So that's when he was just like, let's start small. Let's start a garden on our balcony. And I did. And it was explosive, and I used every space, everything that I could grow, and not knowing what I was doing, and that's where that started. And then it just kept growing and wanting to do more and add more and experience more. And
I mentioned like the phrase like crawl, walk, run earlier. So I feel like the balcony was like your crawl of like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to like take care of my plants, and maybe a few will die, and I'll learn and get better. And then the walk was Midlothian with I don't even know how many garden beds you had. The most I've ever seen at any little 0.15 acre lot ever. And then now you guys are kind of like running, and you guys will be marathoning at some point. As you guys add more to your guys' homestead.
Do you guys want to get bigger than what you are right now? Like, what's the goal and the vision there?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when Amber said that, a marathon, what that might look like. I like the idea of finding some niche, some type of product that we could make, I think, because those are kind of the different routes. Like, what can you make that you could sell? Like, some type of soup or something like that, dried fruit, whatever. Those are good ways to get started, especially if you want to sell it, to make it for yourself and then make it to sell is a good way to cover your costs and maybe even make a little profit. If that's what you're shooting for, that's a good place to start. I do like the idea of some type of like smoke cured dried meat, like prosciutto or something like that. Some type of
we tried that with our
charcuterie
it's pretty good.
It was, yeah.
Can you guys share a little bit about what you've made and sold on the homestead? Because you guys have done a couple of things.
Yeah, so I think one of the easiest animals to start with is definitely chickens. And now is a good time to have chickens and raise chickens. They're relatively, especially if you have the setup, we kind of have a free range where they just go through the woods in our yard. So if you can fence in an area and you can have a guardian dog, like a Great Pyrenees.
Or a donkey.
Or
Don't really want a donkey.
Not gonna. You can have a system that kind of works together. It's really cool. Just to see how, Great Pyrenees just have an instinct to care for animals and protect them. It's very amazing to see that most of the time they don't hurt the chickens at all. But they take care of them and they protect them really well and they protect the family. So if you have an enclosed area, that's a good place to start because then they can kind of do their own thing. They can forage. They can, chickens will eat things like ticks, which are pretty prevalent out in the country and even more and more in the suburbs too, in the woods and forest preserves. But that's a good system because it's helping you, it's keep fertilizing the ground. You can kind of create this small area where you have a little utopia of sorts. It's cool.
And going back to the acres, what we found in our group of homesteading and farming community is that, you get 1 acre, you want 5 acres. You get 5 acres, you want 10 acres. You get 10 acres, 100 acres seems like the next step. And for some farmers, that is. And we have good friends who are just buying property all around them and their business is thriving and growing in the community. And it's amazing because they figured out what they're doing. And then we have other friends who they're buying property, but they're doing like forest, like agroforestry and more orchard type, stuff. So for us, we're in this shift. The last year we took a step back from working on our own property, and now we're moving back into that and figuring out what it is that we're going to do. A couple of years ago, I started growing microgreens because that was my way of dealing with my own grief, and it was something that brings life and is good for you, and it was something I could do in my home and I could do with my girls and my family, and it was amazing. And we grew that, and then we quickly outgrew our space. And so now, I took a step back from that and we're just doing farmers markets and just, customers that we've made connections and relationships with. And so I will continue to grow microgreens, but that to me it doesn't feel like farming, right? And so we're trying to figure out what it is. And we do plan to look for a different space at some point, maybe within the next 5 years when the market changes a little bit, and figuring out we have family here and a great community, and so finding I feel like everybody's looking for the same thing. But I think 5 acres, I don't know if I can't even put a point to it. Who knows? On the way here I was thinking about what it felt like right now we're living out a prayer that was answered. We're living out a dream that we had 16, 15 years ago in an apartment building, or that we never would have dreamed would come true. It was just like, how did this happen? And we life happened, and then it's so quick to miss out on, what you have. Like, we're dreamers. He's more so a dreamer, but
no, you're a dreamer too.
I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer.
Admit it, Audrey.
That's true. Okay. Yes. But, and I think with that, it's amazing. You have to have that. You have to have, because it gives you hope, right? It gives you that energy that you need on those hard days when you don't want to go out and fix the frozen water, or you don't want to, be out in the elements and dirty, and it's just you're sore and you're tired and you're just like, But what it can also do, the negative side, if there was a negative side to it, which there are many more, but I'm sure. But for us, it was like we weren't living in the moment. Mm-hmm. And we needed to take a step back and say, okay, we're constantly looking, what can we do next? How can we improve? How can we be more efficient? What can we add? Instead of being like, look at what we did. Yeah. This is huge. And then caring for that well, mm-hmm. and doing it right, instead of just, what's a quick, easy way to do this? Or how can we do this? And so that's where I'm excited for this new season of life, for us to be able to take a moment and finish the projects that we started.
I think we could learn a lesson from that.
Yes, I think that's I'm glad we're not alone, and we're not. This is every homesteader and farmer that I know of, and so we're not alone, but to finish those and to enjoy that, because mm-hmm. tomorrow isn't promised, and I want to look ahead enough, but not be distracted from enjoying the beauty and all that is in our hands right now.
Yeah, you can't undersell focus. There is a lot of good that comes with it. Like, if you can stay focused, stay organized, accomplish things, there's a certain amount of you can be in a high of that feels good, get that done, and move on to something else to get excited. But I agree with Audrey that to take time to just enjoy where you are and not be too focused on what you don't have, because it'll come at a cost too. Mm-hmm. Everything looks better when it's not yours.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the Next Gen Real Estate Podcast. I think I've learned a lot from you guys, and it's just been fun to talk about something I'm super passionate, that you guys are super passionate about.